During World War II, over 1 million tons of Allied shipping were dragged to the bottom of the Atlantic by these 5 men. Together, they came closer than any fighting force in history to strangling the British Empire into submission, cutting off the food, fuel and weapons an entire nation needed to survive. They moved at walking pace, in complete darkness, completely invisible, and the most powerful naval force on Earth had almost no answer for them. Viktor Schütze was the kind of commander the Allies never saw coming, because by the time they knew he was there, the ship was already sinking. Born in Kiel in 1906, Germany's great naval port city, Schütze spent over a decade mastering torpedo attack aboard fast surface warships before transferring to the U-boat arm in 1935. That background gave him something most submarine commanders never developed: a precise, almost surgical understanding of attack angles and torpedo trajectories. He didn't guess, he calculated. And in the Atlantic, that difference was measured in ships. By early 1940, his patrols aboard U-25 announced his arrival immediately. On his second patrol, he located a convoy and sank 6 steamers, totaling 27,335 tons in a single sweep. Extraordinary at a stage of the war when Allied convoy defences were still being hastily assembled, and most U-boat commanders were struggling to find targets at all. But nothing prepared the Allies for what came next. In March 1941, Schütze took U-103 deep into the North Atlantic and West African waters and hunted alone for 52 days. No wolfpack coordination, no shared kills. He sank 13 ships, totaling 65,172 tons. Fuel tankers that would never reach British ports. Cargo vessels carrying food to a nation already rationing. Weapon shipments that would never arrive. Britain in 1941 was fighting for survival on every front, and Schütze was systematically dismantling its lifeline, one vessel at a time. It remains the single highest ship count patrol by any U-boat commander in the entire war. Karl Dönitz, Commander-in-Chief of Germany's entire U-boat fleet, the man who controlled every submarine deployment in the Atlantic, immediately set in motion the recommendation for Schütze's Oak Leaves, the Kriegsmarine's highest combat decoration, awarded to only the most elite commanders. Schütze became just the 7th submarine commander of any nation to exceed 200,000 tons of career tonnage. He conducted 7 war patrols in total, sinking 35 ships and 180,073 tons before rotating off frontline duty. He was never sunk, never captured. He simply disappeared into staff roles, then into history, quiet, efficient, and almost entirely forgotten. But if Schütze was the silent professional, the next commander was something altogether different. A man whose name Germany's own official war bulletins broadcast to the nation 3 separate times. Ask most historians to name the deadliest U-boat commanders of the Second World War, and Heinrich Liebe's name rarely surfaces. That obscurity is one of the great injustices of the Atlantic campaign, because his record demands to be heard. Liebe entered the Reichsmarine in 1927, spending years aboard surface warships before transferring to the U-boat arm in 1935. By the time war broke out in September 1939, he was already a seasoned commander with a decade of naval experience behind him. His first patrol announced immediately that he was something different. When U-38 encountered the British cargo steamer Manar in September 1939 and Liebe moved to stop her, she turned her guns on him, becoming the first merchant ship in the entire war to fire back at a U-boat. Liebe dived and sank her with torpedoes. He didn't flinch, he adapted. What followed over the next 2 years was a campaign of quiet, methodical destruction that the Allies struggled to explain. Liebe didn't rely on wolfpack tactics or dramatic convoy ambushes. He hunted with patience and precision, ranging from the North Sea to the West African coast, dismantling Allied supply lines one vessel at a time. By June 1940, Germany's official Armed Forces War Bulletin, broadcast nationally, named him publicly for the first time. It would do so twice more before his career ended. His most devastating patrol came in April 1941, when U-38 departed Lorient and drove deep into West African waters. Over 11.5 weeks, Liebe sank 8 British and Allied ships, totalling 47,279 tons, vessels carrying raw materials along the colonial trade routes that were keeping Britain's war industries alive. Adolf Hitler personally received Liebe at the Wolf's Lair in June 1941 to present his oak leaves decoration, one of only 13 men across all of Germany's armed forces to receive it at that point in the war. Across 9 patrols, Liebe sank 34 ships and 187,267 tons. He never lost a single crew member, not one man. In a war that consumed U-boat crews at a catastrophic rate, that record speaks to a commander of extraordinary skill and judgment. But while Liebe's war was defined by cold precision, the next commander announced himself to the entire world with a single act, sinking an American warship 5 weeks before America even entered the war. Halloween 1941. 600 miles west of Iceland, Erich Topp lined up his torpedoes on USS Reuben James, an American destroyer escorting a British convoy through the North Atlantic. America wasn't at war, not yet, but Topp wasn't thinking about politics. He fired. The torpedoes struck the forward magazine, triggering an explosion so catastrophic it blew the bow completely off the ship. Of 160 officers and men aboard, 115 never came home. It was the first United States warship lost to enemy action in the entire war, 5 weeks before Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor formally dragged America into the conflict. The sinking caused immediate outrage in Washington and became so embedded in American culture that folk singer Woody Guthrie wrote and recorded a song about it, asking simply, "Tell me, what were their names?" That single act defined Topp's place in history, but it was far from his only contribution to the Atlantic campaign. Born in Hanover in 1914, Topp had entered the Reichsmarine in 1934, eventually transferring to the U-boat arm after a chance encounter with Dönitz during the Spanish Civil War. By 1940, he was commanding U-552, a Type 7C submarine, whose conning tower bore a painted red devil, earning her the permanent nickname Der Rote Teufel. The name suited her commander perfectly. In March 1942, Topp took U-552 west toward the American eastern seaboard during the early months of Operation Drumbeat, Germany's campaign to exploit America's dangerously undefended coastline. What he found there was, in his own words, a shooting gallery. Over 52 days, he sank 7 ships, totaling 45,731 tons off the coasts of Nova Scotia and Cape Hatteras. Tankers, freighters, and cargo vessels moving through waters that American Naval Command had catastrophically failed to protect. Entire communities along the eastern seaboard watched the horizon burn. Across 17 patrols, Topp sank 35 merchant ships and 197,460 tons of Allied shipping. He was one of only 33 men in the entire German armed forces ever awarded the Knight's Cross with oak leaves and swords, the highest decoration the Third Reich could bestow. He survived the war, rebuilt his life as an architect, rejoined the West German Navy in 1958, and spent 3 years working as a NATO officer inside the Pentagon in Washington. The man who sank America's first warship of World War II, working alongside the Americans he once hunted. He died in 2005, aged 91. But while Topp's defining moment lasted the length of a torpedo run, the next commander's most famous achievement lasted 205 days, the longest single patrol in the entire history of submarine warfare. 205 days. Wolfgang Lüth spent 205 consecutive days at sea on a single patrol, longer than most men could psychologically survive, longer than most marriages last under pressure, longer than the human mind was ever designed to endure inside a steel tube beneath the Atlantic. And when he finally returned to port, he had sunk 10 more ships. That patrol alone would have secured his legend, but Lüth had been building toward it for years. He was born in Riga in 1913, a Baltic German who crossed into Germany at 19 to join the Reichsmarine, driven by ambition that a courtroom career could never satisfy. By 1939, he was already at sea when war broke out, serving as watch officer aboard U-38, the very boat commanded by Heinrich Liebe. He learned his craft under one of the best, and it showed. His early commands produced immediate results. In May 1940, patrolling off the Norwegian coast aboard U-9, Lüth executed one of the most psychologically striking kills of the entire Atlantic campaign, sinking the French submarine FS Doris in open combat. U-boat commanders were trained to hunt merchant vessels. Sinking an enemy submarine required a different level of precision entirely, and Lüth did it cleanly. It was one of the only confirmed instances in the entire war of a German U-boat destroying an enemy submarine in open water. By October 1940, commanding the small coastal U-138, he penetrated convoy OB-228 on his very first patrol and sank 4 ships in a single night, 34,633 tons, a stunning achievement for a submarine not designed for such aggressive operations. The Knight's Cross followed immediately, making him the only commander of a coastal-type U-boat in the entire war to receive it. His greatest achievements came aboard U-181, ranging deep into the Indian Ocean and South African waters. Donitz, so impressed he transmitted the oak leaves, swords and diamonds decoration to Lüth via radio message mid-patrol, had privately earmarked him as the future commander-in-chief of the entire U-boat fleet. He was the first naval officer in history to receive that decoration. Only 7 people in all of Germany ever had. Across 15 patrols and 5 U-boat commands, Lüth sank 46 ships and 225,204 tons of Allied shipping, second only to one man in the entire history of submarine warfare. He never got the chance to lead it. 4 days after Germany surrendered in May 1945, Lüth was shot dead by his own sentry, failing to respond to a password challenge in the darkness. He was 31 years old. Donitz conducted his funeral personally. But as extraordinary as Lüth's record was, one man still stood above him, a commander so lethal that Winston Churchill personally called him Hitler's most talented U-boat commander. The Allies had a name for him before they ever caught him: the Atlantic Wolf. Allied convoy commanders briefed their crews about him specifically, not about U-boats generally, not about German tactics broadly, but about one man, Otto Kretschmer. Because by 1941, no other name in the Atlantic carried the same weight of dread. His philosophy was deceptively simple: 1 torpedo, 1 ship. While other commanders fired salvos and hoped, Kretschmer closed to point-blank range, identified his target precisely, and fired once. He didn't waste ammunition. He didn't miss. Between June 1940 and March 1941, just 9 months, he sank 44 ships and 253,878 tons of Allied shipping aboard U-99 alone. Entire convoys were rerouted trying to avoid him. Canadian intelligence records described his career simply as a reign of terror. What made Kretschmer truly revolutionary was his night surface attack doctrine. Conventional U-boat tactics dictated attacking submerged, from distance, in daylight. Kretschmer did the opposite, surfacing at night, driving directly into convoy escort screens, his low silhouette invisible against the dark horizon, while the merchant ships were silhouetted against the sky. By the time escorts realized he was inside the convoy, ships were already burning. He was also, remarkably, known for his compassion. After sinking vessels, he routinely surfaced to provide survivors with directions to the nearest land, fresh water, and rations before departing. In one documented instance, he hauled a lone survivor directly from the water and ensured his safe return. In the middle of a war of annihilation, Kretschmer operated by a personal code that his enemies respected deeply. The Allies finally stopped him on the night of March 17, 1941, when HMS Walker and Vanock depth-charged U-99 into submission north of the Hebrides. Kretschmer scuttled his boat and surrendered. He was so valuable that Dönitz personally authorized a submarine mission to Canada to rescue him from his POW camp. It failed. Kretschmer spent the rest of the war as a prisoner, receiving his Knight's Cross with oak leaves and swords while behind barbed wire, a decoration awarded to just 160 men across the entire German armed forces. He was never surpassed. Not in World War II, not ever. 274,333 tons, the most lethal submarine commander any navy has ever produced. Winston Churchill called him Hitler's most talented U-boat commander. He wasn't wrong. 5 commanders, over 1 million tons. Schütze, 180,073. Liebe, 187,267. Topp, 197,460. Lüth, 225,204. Kretschmer, 274,333. If you enjoyed this ranking, subscribe and watch our next video right now.